It is always a fascinating experience when you are at the top of your game and moving at a dangerous speed, not entirely to yourself, but to anyone who would dare cross paths with you. UFC middleweight fighter Bo Nickal is that man. The three-time NCAA champion is fast becoming one of the top 3 MMA prospects. Interestingly, Bellator featherweight Aaron Pico thinks Nickal might be moving more quickly than he should and has some advice for the young dreamer. You first need to know that Bo Nickal is way ahead of his time. Bo Nickal has only 2 fights to his credit, yet he fantasizes a dream of knocking out current UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. It's interesting when you realize Nickal's achievements are yet to get him on the official UFC roster. He's got phenomenal potential, exudes overwhelming confidence, and is backed by the necessary hype. However, Aaron Pico, a Bellator featherweight fighter, has been in Nickal's shoes before and understands how a prospect can quickly bite the dust if his career survives on potential and hype alone. Let's take a look at the advice Pico had for Bo Nickal. In an interview with The Fighter vs. the Writer, Pico says this way: "When I first came in and got my career started, I knew I had my work cut out for me. The organization wanted me to be a champion, and hindsight's 2020, I was rushed a little bit, but it's tough." Speaking further, Pico summarizes the UFC as grueling on the body, both mentally and physically. In addition, the fact that he believes being a perfectionist, as he is, only makes the process a lot more strenuous. In his own words, he said, "I am so hard on myself. It keeps me up at night. Some mornings I'm up early studying, trying to be a better fighter. By no means do I think I've arrived yet. It's a tough sport, especially when you want to be great." Pico also emerged from the list of prominent faces in the MMA. Coincidentally, his career was picked up almost simultaneously as the gists around Bo Nickal were thriving. He acknowledges that Nickal has the makings of a future champion. However, Pico believes that nothing stays the same regarding combat sports. Much like Bo Nickal, Aaron Pico's earlier years in the UFC had been phenomenal. Pico was once recognized as a once-in-a-time prospect, but quite unlike Nickal, he had to face more experienced contenders. His first 7 fights ended in a 4-3 record, alongside experiencing some of the most brutal knockouts in his career. Pico never had the pleasure of taking deep breaths before plunging into the octagon. He doesn't want Nickal to face the same troubles. He says it's a different speed, especially with high-level fighters. The speed and the timing are a lot different. He explains that the chances of Nickal being a champion are very high, but there's no need to rush. In his own words, Pico put it this way: "When that time comes, it's going to come fast, and make sure that you're ready because the competition is nice and it feels good when you beat these guys. But at the highest level, the speed and the reaction time are on a different level." Furthermore, Aaron Pico believes that everything that happens before a fight is as important as the fight itself. Quite the philosophical perspective, right? Let's hear it from the man himself. "You need to adjust your eyes and get comfortable in the cage. You felt the crowd, the lights. I constantly tell my fighters, don't rush the process. Take your time with everything leading up to the fights, including the media, the hotel you stay at, and the practice sessions." In the same profound spirit as his desire to knock out Israel Adesanya, I hope Nickal listens to and implements the advice. Talking about his not-to-be-forgotten debut at Madison Square Garden with an 11-fight veteran, Pico puts the experience this way: "When I came into the sport, I was 20 years old, and my first fight was in Madison Square Garden against a guy that was 9-2, fought for an LFA title the night before. So he's a guy that's been around the sport a long time. Mentally, I just wasn't ready." Well, Pico's already learned his lesson. He checkmates every unnecessary ambition by reminding himself that he's a long way from fighting for the title. He prefers to take the fights as slow as possible with a focus on getting better at his game. "I didn't have time to develop and be with a coach to say we're going to work on this can happen, and it all changed for me when I came to Albuquerque and I started working with the coaches that I have now. I didn't fight for almost a year, and I was with Greg Jackson and Brandon Gibson working daily on fighting. I would tell myself to go to Jackson Wink and maybe take a year off and develop," Pico says. Despite his philosophy, Pico believes that every fighter is different. Talking about Daniel Cormier, who debuted when he was 31, Pico believes that Cormier was way ahead of his time, and he means this positively. Unlike most fighters, Cormier had participated in the Olympics and was ready to take on the challenges that came with the hype. The same could be said of Bo Nickal, who believes he can challenge and probably KO the best middleweights the UFC had to offer on his first day. What more can we say? We're right behind you, Nickal. Heading to Pico, the fighter gave an inspirational assessment of his career. He says, "I'm happy the way everything worked out. I wouldn't be in the situation I am now. I wouldn't have the manager, I wouldn't have the coaches, and I don't think I would be the fighter I am today. I don't take it for granted. You hear me say it, this sport is very, very difficult. It can change in seconds, so I'm very focused. I take it seriously, and I think I'm in a good position. That's a lot coming from the veteran. It's not common to hear a fighter of Pico's caliber speak humbly about his career and experience. Hopefully, if Nickal ever hears it, he might tackle some oversights in his ambition. At least that's what we want to hear. In other news, Jake Paul's late knockdown of Anderson Silva secures him a unanimous decision victory, thereby prolonging his winning streak. It was an enthralling bloodbath on Saturday morning's bout between rising talent Jake Paul and UFC veteran Anderson Silva at Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, Arizona, although it wasn't entirely a bloodbath. Interestingly, the scorecards seemed to be in Jake Paul's favor, but the Americans had a different experience. For the most part of the fight, Jake suffered several stunning blows from Silva that would have sent anyone into a coma. Luckily, Jake's timely counter right straightened out Anderson Silva's ambition and sent him crashing onto his butt. It was the best comeback punch of the night. The final results were 77-74, 78-73, and 78-73 in Jake's favor. The win over Anderson makes it Jake's number 6 on his undefeated scorecard. Recalling the experience, Jake says, "It's a surreal moment. Hard work pays off. I want to say thank you to Anderson. He was my idol growing up. He's a tough mofo, a legend." You might be interested in understanding how tough and somewhat impossible the bout with Anderson Silva was for Jake Paul. Anderson Silva is a former UFC middleweight champion who holds the record of being the most extended title holder in the history of the UFC. His long reign began in 2006 and ended in 2013, totaling 2,457 days. What's more, Anderson recorded 16 consecutive wins in that same period. That's impressive, and for a young fighter like Jake, it might seem overwhelming. Anyway, Anderson wasn't displeased about the judge's decision. He praised Jake's tenacity in beating him. He put it this way, "That's the game. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. The judges got it right. Listen, it's tough to come inside and fight with a young kid. I tried to do my best. Jake is better than me today. I don't have anything bad to say about my opponent. I think everybody needs to respect this kid. It was a tough fight for me today." Jake Paul's win over Anderson has gotten several reactions from pro-UFC fighters. Derek Brunson took to his Twitter account on 4 different occasions, tweeting at 5:39 a.m. "This is incredible. Hashtag Paul versus Silver at 5:42 a.m. Dana White somewhere breaking his 300-inch TV. UFC President Dana White and Jake Paul had been in some form of rivalry after White held critical statements against Jake's match with Hasim Rahman Jr. Well, that's a story for another day. Back to Brunson, whose last tweet was, "Y'all boxers better get going. You're about to let Jake Paul be the boxer of the year." Terrence McKinney's comments also made the top spot. He tweeted, "Jake was so impressive tonight that winning wouldn't be a surprise. Hashtag respect." Furthermore, he commented that Anderson Silva still had the GOAT look, being 47 years old already. However, Anthony Njokuani wasn't impressed with the judge's decision. He expressed his displeasure by tweeting, "How was that a unanimous decision? Which fight were the judges watching? The judges at Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva." That's all, folks. Do you have any thoughts about this video? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Take care.